They won't slap you across the face or scream accusations in the town square. They won't drag your reputation through the mud, at least not where witnesses can testify to their cruelty. But they will exhale just a fraction too long when you speak, as if your words burden the very air. They'll intercept your most crucial points with perfectly timed jest, transforming your gravity into their entertainment. They'll mysteriously forget to include you in vital correspondence, delay their responses until urgency becomes desperation, or dismiss your contributions with that particular smile, the one that whispers, "Your voice carries no weight in this court." These are not accidents of social clumsiness. These are calculated strikes against your political capital, each one surgical, sharp, and utterly deniable. Most courtiers absorb these microaggressions like loyal subjects, crafting elaborate justifications because surely, it wasn't truly malicious, was it? But Niccolò Machiavelli would remind you that this is precisely how principalities fall, not through dramatic coups or open rebellion, but through 1,000 invisible cuts to the ruler's authority. Once your subjects discover they can execute these harmless maneuvers without facing the prince's wrath, escalation becomes inevitable. What begins as a casual dismissive glance evolves until you become the court jester, the council afterthought, the powerless figurehead whose commands carry no more weight than suggestions. The battlefield of influence doesn't commence with declarations of war, it opens with tone, with calculated glances, with strategic silences. If you permit these 4 specific violations of respect, each seemingly innocent yet devastatingly effective, you broadcast something catastrophic to your political environment, that your authority can be eroded without consequence. The first stratagem, the art of feigned confusion. The opening gambit arrives disguised as innocent bewilderment. You articulate a directive with crystal clarity, measured, precise, leaving no room for misinterpretation. Yet your listener performs confusion, not because they lack the intelligence to comprehend, but because it forces you into an undignified dance of repetition. You find yourself over-explaining, clarifying, repeating your commands until you sound uncertain, desperate, or worse, dependent upon their understanding for your authority to function. In Machiavelli's strategic framework, this tactic proves lethal because it creates an asymmetrical power dynamic that inverts the natural order. They maintain the passive position, confused, innocent, seemingly cooperative, while systematically undermining the hierarchy. Suddenly, you transform from commander to supplicant, laboring to earn their comprehension, performing elaborate explanations for their manufactured ignorance. If you tolerate this dynamic, you're not demonstrating the patience of a wise ruler, you're accepting the subordination of a weak one. Machiavelli would counsel, a prince never clarifies beyond the initial command. When a subject feigns confusion after your first clear directive, don't repeat, reinforce your authority. Deploy something like, "I believe my instruction was sufficiently clear." If it wasn't understood, perhaps this matter holds different levels of importance for each of us. Brief, composed, final. You reclaim dominance by identifying their selective comprehension as the actual problem, not the clarity of your leadership. Because when you allow someone to repeatedly misunderstand your directives, they're not confused, they're conditioning you to believe your commands lack force. The second weapon, comedy as political assassination. The second violation masquerades as courtly wit. You establish a boundary or present a strategic vision, only to encounter smirks, chuckles, and the inevitable, "Surely you jest, my lord." It's character assassination wrapped in humor, public undermining disguised as entertainment, the calculated strike delivered before an audience that transforms your gravitas into their amusement. Here lies the psychological trap that has destroyed more leaders than open rebellion. Respond with seriousness and you appear humorless, a tyrant who cannot appreciate levity. Ignore the slight and the behavior escalates like a cancer through your court. Attempt to mirror their approach and you're labeled as desperate, a ruler reduced to jesting for approval. But Machiavelli never played by the rules others expected, and neither should you. He understood that behind every, merely in jest, lies a calculated assault on your dignity. When you respond with forced laughter or strategic silence, you're not maintaining court harmony, you're authorizing the systematic destruction of your reputation. The Machiavellian counter-strategy requires exposing their gambit with princely poise and surgical precision. A slight forward lean, expression neutral as marble, and a response like, "How fascinating that some choose humor as their shield when they wish to speak truths they lack the courage to state directly." Deliver it with sufficient volume for the entire court to witness, not angry, not loud, simply undeniable. It's a verbal blade that cuts through their comedic mask, revealing the political maneuvering while demonstrating that you recognize the game and refuse to participate as the victim. In one stroke, you've transformed their weapon into evidence of their weakness. The third siege, time as political currency. The third assault operates as the slow poison of respect, so subtle that most rulers never detect it until their authority has completely evaporated. A courtier consistently delays responses to your urgent communications while replying instantly to others of lesser rank. They postpone scheduled audiences repeatedly. They arrive late to your councils or, more devastatingly, vanish entirely until they suddenly require your favor. This isn't mere discourtesy or the chaos of a busy court. This is the systematic exploitation of your tolerance, and every instance you accept without correction trains them to view your time as less valuable than their convenience. Machiavelli recognized time as one of the most potent currencies in political relationships. He would ask, who waits for whom? Who adjusts their schedule for whom? Who gives time and who extracts it? This dynamic never remains neutral. When they make you wait, they're communicating your position in their hierarchy of importance, and it's not at the top. The Machiavellian principle, mirror the importance they demonstrate toward you, but with strategic elegance. Don't plead for their punctuality, withdraw your availability without announcement. Stop initiating contact. Stop filling uncomfortable silences in council meetings. Stop contorting your schedule to accommodate their whims. Let the silence expand like a void in your court. Let them experience the absence of your attention. If they value access to your power, they'll notice the withdrawal. If they don't, you've just avoided investing more political capital in someone who was systematically devaluing your authority. The fourth deception, the poison of false loyalty. This brings us to the fourth violation, the most treacherous to detect, the most corrosive to princely power. The supportive sabotage. This manifests as the advisor who celebrates your ambitions while cautioning against reaching too high. The courtier who praises your strategies in private, then whispers to others that your plans require significant refinement. The ally who encourages you to speak boldly in council, only to later suggest you came across as, perhaps too forceful. This isn't open treason, it's slow-motion betrayal wrapped in loyalty, the perfect disguise for envy. Machiavelli understood the supreme danger of false allies, those who smile in your presence while planting seeds of self-doubt strategically throughout your court. If they can make you second-guess your own judgment, they never need to challenge you directly. You'll diminish your own authority voluntarily. To counter this, Machiavelli would employ strategic intelligence gathering. Subtly exaggerate a plan around them. Share a version of your strategy that's 20% bolder than your actual intention. Then observe their reaction with the cold calculation of a master politician. If they attempt to scale down your ambitions again, especially with manufactured concern for your reputation or the stability of the realm, you've identified them as a threat to your power. The solution isn't always banishment, it's compartmentalization. You don't necessarily exile them from court. You stop feeding them the information they'll weaponize. You smile, you nod, you maintain the facade of trust, but you no longer grant them access to your true intentions. Because every time you tolerate these quiet betrayals, you're allowing others to write the narrative of your reign. And to a Machiavellian mind, control of the narrative equals control of the state. Alright, so let's talk about what real authority actually looks like, because most people get this completely wrong. They think power is about making grand speeches or dramatic displays, but here's the thing, that's amateur hour stuff. Now, Machiavelli understood something that most rulers never figure out: your authority isn't tested during the big moments of obvious rebellion. No, it's tested in those tiny, almost invisible moments when someone thinks they can get away with a little disrespect. And here's where it gets interesting: the moment you let that slide, you've basically handed them a roadmap to your weaknesses. You know what separates lasting rulers from historical footnotes. It's not how they handle open rebellion, it's how they respond when someone interrupts them mid-sentence during a meeting. When someone shows up late to their appointments. When someone makes a joke at their expense and everyone laughs just a little too enthusiastically. These aren't accidents, by the way. These are calculated tests. People are constantly asking themselves, how far can I push this person before they actually do something about it? And every single time you let something slide, you're answering that question for them. Now, here's where most people mess this up completely. They think reclaiming authority means getting loud, getting dramatic, maybe banishing someone from the kingdom. But that's not precision, that's desperation. Real power moves are surgical, elegant, and they leave everyone else thinking, I definitely don't want to test this person. So let's say you're in a meeting and someone keeps interrupting you. Not obviously enough to warrant immediate punishment, but strategically, just enough to redirect attention every time you're building towards something important. Most people either stay silent, looking weak, laugh it off, looking foolish, or raise their voice, looking desperate. But here's what Machiavelli would do instead. Mid-interruption, you pause. Complete stillness. Look at them, not with rage, but with the cold assessment of someone evaluating whether they're worth keeping around. Then you speak with quiet authority. How curious that you consistently interject precisely as I approach my most important points. One might wonder if you fear the weight of what I'm about to reveal. See what just happened there. No shouting, no accusations. You just held up a mirror and let everyone else see what they were doing. Now every eye in the room is on them, not you. You've completely flipped the power dynamic without sacrificing an ounce of dignity. Once you demonstrate that you notice their subtle disrespect and possess the skill to expose it publicly yet tastefully, they begin recalibrating their behavior around your authority. Now let's talk about something even more sophisticated, the courtier who consistently withholds acknowledgement of your achievements. You accomplish something remarkable, secure a significant victory, and they respond with calculated silence. No congratulations, no public support, not even basic recognition. This isn't accidental, it's psychological siege warfare. They're trying to control your self-perception by starving you of validation. And here's the trap most rulers fall into, they start chasing that approval, begging for recognition. Don't do that. Instead, you bypass their control entirely. You don't complain about their silence, you ensure that others throughout your realm witness your accomplishments. You weave your victories naturally into conversations. That treaty I negotiated last month, the one that secured those trade advantages, taught me valuable lessons about reading foreign diplomats. You're not requesting applause, you're establishing historical record. More importantly, you're reclaiming the narrative before their silence can rewrite your reign. But here's where things get really dangerous, collective undermining. This is when multiple people, maybe unconsciously, start echoing the same subtle dismissals of your authority. They laugh too enthusiastically when you make minor errors. They exchange meaningful glances when you speak. They create an inner circle that positions you as the outsider in your own court. Initially, it feels like paranoia, and that's the genius of it, it's designed to make you question your own perceptions. Most rulers either break down into tyrannical paranoia or become defensive and erratic. Both responses accelerate their downfall. So imagine your counsel is subtly mocking a military strategy you proposed. You sense the tension, the stifled amusement, the dismissive undertones. Instead of reacting defensively, you enter the next meeting with undeniable leverage. Since my previous strategic proposal didn't resonate with this council, I took the liberty of consulting with military advisors from allied kingdoms. Fascinating, 2 of them are already implementing similar tactics with remarkable success. It's remarkable how perspective shifts when you seek counsel beyond familiar voices. That's not just a response, that's political dominance. You've asserted your strategy had merit, exposed their insular thinking, and reclaimed authority by demonstrating that your wisdom transcends their limited perspective. This is the Machiavellian approach to authority, You don't punish subjects for disrespect, you make them desperately wish they'd respected you from the beginning. Every interaction, every response, every calculated move becomes part of a larger strategy for maintaining power. Your subjects are constantly observing, constantly testing, whether they realize it or not. They're perpetually asking, how far can we push this ruler before they demonstrate real consequences? Your objective isn't to become a tyrant or a beloved figure, it's to become untouchable without ever raising your voice in anger. Now, here's what makes subtle disrespect so dangerous: it never announces itself. It seeps through daily interactions, accumulating like poison, slowly corrupting how others perceive your authority and how you perceive your own power. Consider selective acknowledgement. You notice a courtier consistently recognizes others publicly and enthusiastically, but when you speak, they examine their correspondence. When you enter the chamber, they nod but don't rise. When you make proclamations worthy of attention, they never respond, yet you observe them celebrating everyone else's minor achievements. This isn't oversight, it's engineered political minimization. They want you to see that they see you but don't consider you worthy of public deference. In the game of political status, selective attention functions as currency. When someone withholds it from you consistently, they're marking you as low value to everyone else. The counter isn't begging for their acknowledgement or mirroring their pettiness. You elevate your own visibility until their silence becomes conspicuous to everyone else. You build third-party validation, get other nobles, foreign dignitaries, and respected advisors discussing your wisdom, your achievements, your indispensable value to the realm. But perhaps the most sophisticated form of subtle disrespect is false elevation. This is when someone praises you for qualities that actually limit your power. They call you the merciful ruler, the patient prince, the one who never resorts to harsh measures. Sounds like praise, right? It's not. It's a political cage disguised as a crown. What they're really saying is, stay predictably gentle, never surprise us with strength, don't disrupt the comfortable dynamic where we can push boundaries without real consequences. The moment you step outside that carefully constructed image by being decisive or strategically ruthless, they'll punish you by withdrawing that false praise. Suddenly you're changing, becoming harsh, not the wise ruler you used to be. Machiavelli would never allow others to define the boundaries of his political character. So here's the move: redefine yourself without seeking permission. If they say, "You're always so reasonable and patient," you reply, "Patience has its place, but so does decisive action when the realm requires it." With that single statement, you shatter the limiting image and replace it with someone far more complex and potentially dangerous. This brings us to Machiavelli's ultimate principle: he who builds authority on others' approval must constantly defend it, but he who builds it on consistent consequences and strategic unpredictability never needs to justify it. You don't gain lasting dominance by reacting to every slight with dramatic punishment. You gain it by letting people feel the absence of your favor, your access, or your attention the moment they take your authority for granted. When someone disrespects you, whether through calculated confusion, dismissive humor, strategic delays, or false counsel, don't waste energy decoding their motivations. Mark the behavior. Remember the pattern. Adjust your treatment accordingly. Not with rage, not with public confrontation, but with the cold precision of a master strategist. Reduce their access to your inner circle. Remove their influence over important decisions. Recalibrate the entire terms of engagement. Power doesn't always announce itself with trumpets. Sometimes it's the ruler who speaks less but whom everyone watches more carefully. It's the prince who doesn't chase respect but makes others adjust their behavior in anticipation of his reactions. When someone attempts to test your authority in front of the court, you don't glare or argue. You smile with the confidence of someone who holds all the cards, look them directly in the eye, and say something calm yet cutting. People always reveal more about themselves than they intend when they're trying to be clever. You transform their weapon into evidence of their own weakness. Everyone hears it, everyone sees it, and the message becomes crystal clear: you don't play political games, you end them before they begin. Most rulers fail here because they think enforcing respect requires becoming louder, harsher, more obviously threatening. But Machiavelli knew that true authority, the kind that builds dynasties rather than destroys them, comes from being the leader others can't quite predict but always feel observed by. You don't flinch at challenges. You don't react immediately to provocations. You study the situation with the patience of a master chess player, then respond with moves that are measured, elegant, and absolutely irreversible. When someone interrupts your speech, don't raise your voice in competition. Pause with the stillness of absolute confidence. Let them finish their interruption. Then, in front of the entire assembly, return to your point without acknowledging their existence, as if their words never registered, as if they weren't significant enough to derail your thoughts. It's not passive, it's strategic dismissal, the highest form of political dominance. When you act as though someone's disrespect didn't even penetrate your awareness, you're communicating something profound. You don't possess the power to disturb my composure. You don't exist on a level where your noise matters to my reign. That's the Machiavellian coldness that most leaders aren't sophisticated enough to master, but it's what makes potential challengers reconsider their entire approach to your authority. Over time, something remarkable happens. Those who once tested your boundaries stop testing them. They recalibrate their entire approach to interacting with you. They begin weighing every word, every gesture, every joke they might make at your expense. They've been conditioned, not by fear of dramatic punishment, but by the anticipation of your response. That anticipation becomes your invisible armor. You don't need to threaten anyone anymore, they perform the risk calculations themselves. That's how you become truly untouchable, by never letting subtle challenges go unaddressed, by refusing to tolerate disrespect even in its most sophisticated forms, by making everyone in your political sphere feel that they are always being evaluated when they engage with your authority. From this moment forward, you establish the new order, no more laughing off insults disguised as humor, no more accepting silence where support should exist, no more tolerating tone shifts, public slights, false counsel, or anything else that chips away at your power. You don't address these violations to gain validation. You correct them because you understand something Machiavelli carved into the bedrock of political survival: the smallest insult tolerated becomes the largest rebellion invited. When they test you through subtle shade, strategic delays, sarcastic comments, or false loyalty, make your response quiet, precise, and absolutely devastating. Not to teach them a lesson, but to teach everyone else in your court exactly what happens when someone forgets the respect due to true authority. Because in the end, respect isn't something you demand through proclamations, it's something you command through the silent, unwavering certainty that you will never allow your authority to be diminished by anyone, for any reason. And once that certainty radiates from every aspect of your leadership, the testing stops, the games end, and the real respect begins. The choice is clear: remain the ruler others test, or become the prince others respect without question. Machiavelli would tell you the path to lasting power is evident, you need only possess the wisdom and courage to walk it with absolute conviction.